Hello, Resistors. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I want to talk about how my interest-only mortgage nearly ruined my life. To do this, I'll start with a bit of background as to what my goals were at the time when I moved from Zimbabwe to come and settle in the United Kingdom. At the time, one of my goals was to be able to get a mortgage. I wanted to own a property in the UK. I didn't want to rent forever. Now, I'm aware that for most of us, one of our major goals is to build a house back home, not necessarily in the UK. However, I don't see a reason why you can't have both. You can have both. You can have a mortgage in the UK and also build a house back home. But that's another video. So anyway, in this video, I want to remain focused on myself, my story, my interest-only mortgage, how it nearly ruined my life. So I wanted to be able to own a property. And of course, that can be argued. When you have a mortgage, you don't actually own it. In a way, you're still renting, except that you pay those monthly payments to your bank. However, with a mortgage, you get to have equity and all of that. I did a video about this, the advantages and disadvantages of having a mortgage in the UK as an immigrant. And also, I talked about whether it is wise to have a mortgage if you're of a certain age. So you can watch those videos, but this is not what this video is about. This video is about my interest-only mortgage, how it nearly ruined my life. And I've given you the background as to what my goals were. And also at the time, I didn't know much about the process of getting a mortgage, what I needed to do. I've actually made a video explaining that at the time, I got caught up in the excitement of having a mortgage. That is all I wanted. I didn't do my due diligence. I didn't research. I didn't know what the implications were when it comes to my finances, my circumstances at the time. And also looking at my incomings at the time and my outgoings, the math wasn't mathing. I'll explain why I say that. So that's that when it comes to background. Now, when it comes to why I went for the interest-only mortgage, at the time I was working with an advisor, a mortgage advisor. Now, I can't recall exactly what our conversations were like. I can't remember the details because it's been a while now. But what I know for certain is that when I signed on the dotted line, I didn't fully grasp the implications of having an interest-only mortgage. I didn't understand what it meant. What appealed to me was the fact that my monthly repayments were going to be low. They were so low that, yeah, after paying off all my bills, that mortgage, I had a lot of money left. Money to spare, money to save, to send home and do other things. So to me, that was appealing. And I can say the second appeal is the fact that at the time, I was still fairly young. So I didn't have the burden of planning or thinking long term. I wasn't worried at all about the future. And looking at my circumstances at the time, because I had a different type of visa, and looking at my situation at the time, my circumstances, my incomings, my outgoings, because I had only just started working. So to me, this was a big deal. It was a big deal. And in a way, I was thinking I've outsmarted the system, so to speak. Lower payments, no fuss when it comes to the process. There was no fuss at all. So I was just excited. And then came the turning point. The turning point came when I started receiving letters from my bank. The first time I read the letter, it didn't register. The letter was saying something like, we're just writing to remind you that you have an interest-only mortgage and you need to figure out how you're going to pay the rest of the mortgage at the end of your term. So at first I read it and I didn't really pay much attention to it. I was thinking, okay, I'll deal with it later. So basically that letter from my bank was reminding me of my situation, and they were nudging me to think about it, to think about the implications. And like I said, at the time, it didn't quite register. It didn't quite register, especially when it comes to the implications. And I think a contributing factor to me just brushing it aside was the fact that I was thinking, okay, I have plenty of time to worry about this. I'm not going to worry about this now. And then after some time, another letter came, a similar letter came. I'm not quite sure how far apart the letters were, but they were not like every month, every 6 months or anything like that. They were quite spaced, let me say. There was quite a bit of time between each letter. So when I got the second letter, I actually took my time to read it. I read every word and I actually started processing it. I went online and did a bit of digging as well so that I could fully understand the implications. I mean, to someone, they were quite obvious. The implications really are obvious because if you're only paying off interest, you're not really paying off your mortgage. This is plain. But what I'm saying is, at the time, I wasn't processing it in the way that I needed to process it. Because what happens as well is that sometimes you have other things, other more pressing issues that you're dealing with, and you just brush other things aside. So this was my situation at the time. I had other things to think about. I'm not saying there were negative things, no. I had courses, I had all kinds of things relating to work and other issues as well. So to me, this was like a long-term thing. I had no reason to worry about it. So finally it clicked and I made the call. I had a conversation with my bank and I was able to switch to the repayment mortgage. But what that meant was my monthly mortgage payments had to increase. They increased quite significantly because I didn't want to extend the length of my mortgage as well. I wanted to stay within the 25 years. So I had to bump up my monthly payments. And this is how my life nearly got ruined. And another turning point as well, on top of the rise in my monthly payments, which was quite significant, the inflation happened and the rates kept rising. So yeah, the financial and emotional strain is real, but I have since adjusted. I have since found a way to cope, and I'm okay now, because in life you have to do what you have to do to cope. So I have adjusted, I have adapted, and now I have to pay what I have to pay at the end of every month. But to be fair, there are advantages when it comes to the interest only mortgage. This is why I'm saying you need to do your research and you need to know the implications of each type of mortgage. But in my case, I didn't know the advantages and disadvantages of each type of mortgage, and I didn't understand, or I didn't know which type of mortgage was the best for me in my circumstances. So when it comes to the advantages of this type of mortgage, meaning the interest only mortgage, one of the advantages I've already mentioned, you have low monthly repayments. That is an advantage because you have extra money to do other things. And it works well for people who have a clear repayment strategy. If you want to redirect your funds, or if you want to focus your money towards other things that are like more pressing at the time, and you actually have like a clear strategy as to how you're going to rectify that situation, then it can work well. For example, if you've got investments that you need to focus on and you want to channel that money towards those, but you have a plan, then that's fine, it can work well. And also, if you've got savings plans, then yeah, it is going to work, because you know that at the end of that, you're going to get that money to pay off your mortgage. But if you don't have a clear strategy, then guess what? It is not going to work for you. And also, it works for buy to let investors as well, because they have a strategy as to how they're going to make more money. And also, it works for people who are expecting some money to come their way. If you're expecting some kind of financial windfall, for example, maybe it's inheritance, or maybe you're expecting money from somewhere, then in such a situation it works. But if you don't have a plan, then an interest only mortgage is not the right one for you. First of all, it is risky. Secondly, it gives you a false sense of affordability. And lastly, you're going to end up in big trouble. And that is the last thing you want. So what are the lessons from my story? The lessons from my story, from an immigrant's perspective, is the fact that sometimes we can put ourselves under pressure to achieve certain things when we are not quite ready. In my situation, clearly, I hadn't done my research. I didn't fully understand the implications. And if I did, because I can't quite recall the conversation I had with my mortgage advisor when it comes to the implications, I'm leaning towards the fact that my mortgage advisor didn't fully explain or fully advise me in the manner that was easy for me to digest, because had I fully understood, I would have rectified the situation way before I got that letter from my bank. Some people may disagree. They might say it is your fault. It is up to you to find out the information, or to ask the right questions, or to do your due diligence and all that. I accept that. But I'm just telling you how things happened in my situation. So yeah, that's the first lesson. We shouldn't really put pressure on ourselves, unnecessary pressure. And also the importance of financial education, financial literacy. And this one is a major one, because I think that sometimes we focus on other things, on knowing other things, how to navigate certain things, and not really paying particular attention to this area, financial literacy. I mean, financial literacy covers a lot of things like investing and all of that. I mean, according to my opinion, I don't feel that we do that enough, because we are not taught these things in school. That is why I'm saying so. The school doesn't teach us these things. These are things that we have to find out for ourselves. And unfortunately, sometimes we find out the hard way. And also as well, have the courage to ask questions It doesn't matter how silly that question may sound. If you're going to make a financial commitment like having a mortgage, then it is crucial to ask the right questions. And how you know which questions to ask is from research. Talk to other people who've got mortgages. Do your own digging as well into mortgages, how things work. And also another lesson as well, take the time to read the fine print. This is something that I never used to do, but since I got into a bit of trouble with my finances in the past, I've now learned to read every word. I sit down and I read everything. And if I've got questions to ask, I ask without shame. I make no apologies for my questions because I think that print is fine. It is small for a reason. So read the fine print. And if you don't understand, then get an independent advisor, because some mortgage advisors are tied or are connected to the mortgage as well. So they have a deal to close. They're looking after their interest. They want to earn commission. So they may rush you through the process and they may gloss over some details as well, making out like this is the best deal for you, when in actual fact it is not. So never rush to make big financial decisions. So anyway, this is the video. I don't know what you think about everything I've said in this video. As always, feel free to chip in the comments section. Give us your experiences with your mortgage. How did you get your mortgage? What was the process like, and so on. And also don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and also share it as well. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.